as the National Assembly and the House of Assembly joint plenary is doing a scrutiny on the 2024 budget of 27.5 trillion naira, we are also going to be doing our scrutiny here on the show today. Welcome to Business and Finance here on Echo Television International. I am Rachel Tanzi. Yes, the long-awaited 2024 budget is out. I mean, it started at 26 trillion naira proposed, and now we are at 27.5 trillion naira. And yes, we are having our lawmakers sitting down and looking deeply into the budget and assuring us that before December 31st, before we go on the break and enter the new year, we are for sure going to be having an approved 2024 budget. So as they're sitting down, going through and seeing this budget and seeing whether it will pass or it wouldn't, or there are some corrections or some kind of tweaks left, right, center that needed to be done, we are also going to be seeing what the 2024 budget implies, what it has been so far, money allocated to different agencies, and then what it means for us come 2024. So yes, we are going to start with some of the estimate for the budget that was given to us by the federal government, presented by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. First of all, we're having an estimated revenue of 18 trillion naira. Yes, we have to be able to make 18 trillion naira come 2024 for us to be able to finance the majority of our budget. We've heard the finance minister over and over saying that we cannot totally depend on borrowed money to finance our budget. So the federal government is saying that, you know what, there is going to be borrowing for sure. However, let the borrowing be minimized, and then let us focus our attention and our job on generating more revenue to be able to finance over 50% of the budget. So yes, we are estimating 18 trillion naira for 2024 revenue, and going straight into the budget also. Now we also have an estimated oil production of 1.7 million barrels per day. However, there is some scary news though from OPEC concerning oil output cut to 1.5 million. I mean, we're going to talk about that, but then what the federal government is projecting is that we have to produce 1.7 million barrels per day crude oil. That is how we'll be able to finance our budget. And then also the oil price, that is the crude oil per barrel price at $77 to a barrel. And then we are standing at an exchange rate of $750 to a naira. That is a projection for 2024. Also, inflation as it is now in the country is almost 30%. But we are having the government hopeful that they will be able to control and then bring down inflation to 21% for 2024. It is doable, and we are waiting to see that the federal government put everything in place, working hand in hand with the Central Bank of Nigeria, looking at monetary policies and then also fiscal policies to see that for sure we stop at 21.4% inflation rate for 2024. Also, we are looking at a GDP growth rate of 3.76%. This is way higher concerning in regard to what the World Bank has estimated for our GDP growth, and also way higher than what the African Development Bank have said our growth is going to be when we have all of these finance institutes reviewing Nigerians' GDP growth rate. It is way, we've seen where the World Bank predicted that we will go lower than 3.2% as earlier predicted for 2023, but we will be going low to 2.7% growth rate. But we are seeing that the federal government of Nigeria is optimistic that we can have a GDP growth rate come 2024 of 3.76%. It's possible. And then we will wait to see how all the economic indicators will work in our favor for us to be able to have a 3.76% growth. Now, let's look at some of this allocation and how many percentage of funds and money that sectors education, health, security will be getting out of the 2024 budget. And then we're going to start first of all with education. Now we're seeing education having 2.18 trillion naira. That's 7.9% of the budget. Now I just want to focus on we have TED fund getting the most out of it, the chunk, because we're looking at our tertiary education, looking at the new student loan scheme that the president have introduced and other facilities that need to be upgraded. So yes, when it comes to education, we have TED fund that is at the tertiary level getting the highest chunk of this 2.18 trillion naira allocated to education. However, I would like to focus a little bit on the universal basic education, because we saw complaints recently coming from UBEC saying that 100 billion naira yearly is not good enough to fund basic education in the country, and we will agree. Basic education is the bedrock of education in every country, and if it lacks, every other level of education will suffer. So now we are seeing 251 billion naira for basic education 2024 budget. So we are seeing basic education having an increase of over 151 billion naira. Yes, I believe that this is going to give a significant amount of funding and a change in our basic education. So we'll be able to see more teachers recruited. We'll be able to see better classrooms, facilities, and above all, the quality and the standard of education will be increased at the basic education level, that is our primary schools. Now these are mainly government primary schools. This is not going to be including the private primary schools, just the secondary, just the basic education that is belonging to the government. So we are going to see more students being able to have access to basic education, because we know that recently we are having high number of out of school students, and it starts with the basic education. So yes, this is a concern, and I believe that the government have looked into it and see, okay, yes, it is very important for our basic education to get a higher funding compared to the past 2023 budget. Now we will see that health is getting 1.33 trillion naira. That is 5% of our budget. I mean, when you look at this budget, with our doctors japping and living out of this country, seeing how hospitals are taking in less patients, no longer outpatient treatment, and all of that, and seeing that health is only taking 5% of the budget, I mean, this is scary. Because it says one thing for sure, that we are going to see more doctors leaving the shores of this country, because 5%, 1.33 trillion naira is not enough in a lot of ways to meet the needs and the demands of the medical doctors in Nigeria. Talk more of an improvement in the health facilities that we have around the country. We are seeing that primary health educations have been lacking over the years. We need more of them at the local government areas, and there are not enough as it is now. Now we can go and talk about the big hospitals owned by the federal government, the teaching hospitals. We are seeing a lot of lack in facilities and a lot of time to get quality treatment. We have Nigerians leaving the country. So not only are we going to see a surge in patients leaving the country for treatment, we are also going to see a jump in doctors leaving the shores of the country. I just hope that there is a review in what will be allocated to health sector, but this 5% is not enough to meet the demand of the health sector in Nigeria. Now we're seeing infrastructure getting 1.32 trillion naira. That is 5% of the budget, and this includes provision of works and housing, power, transport, water resources, and aviation. I want to be very keen concerning housing, because we are seeing that the cost and price of building materials going high have also influenced the prices of rent of houses in the market. Now this is where I believe that the federal government down to the state government should be able to provide housing for low-income earners. So I want to believe that this means that more should be able to go into house and work, and then we are going to see road power. We saw that the federal government also have to pay tariff, or else Discos and every other power supplying company will have no other option but to increase the tariff hike. And when we have this hike in tariff over 40%, it's going to mean that not only households will suffer, but we are looking at medium scale enterprises also feeling the blow of tariff hike in the country. So I believe that these are two among the many other sectors that are really in need of this funding, and we should be able to feel the impact of the budget on these areas, that is housing and also electricity. Now, social development and poverty mean we are seeing this budget tag as a budget of hope, a budget that is for poverty elevation. And of course, we are seeing that for social development and poverty reduction programs, we are seeing it gulping 534 billion naira. This is going to provision social investment and poverty reduction program. So we don't know yet what the Minister of Welfare is going to do concerning this, but then we are going to see that, of course, there has to be poverty elevation programs coming from the ministry that is in charge of saying that, of course, there is poverty reduction in the country. That is, we are depending on Betta Edu to see what she is going to do to make sure that there is welfare and then people are taken care of in the country. And of course, a significant amount of poverty is being reduced amidst us. Now, we can look at other things allocated in this budget. That is, we are going to go to seeing the recurrent spendings, which of course we have our lawmakers raising an eyebrow to it. 9.92 trillion naira. This budget is taking a big chunk. I mean, this recurrent spending is taking a big chunk of the budget for 2024. Now, debt servicing is going to go up 8.25 trillion naira. Now, I mean, the math is out there. If we are hoping to make 18 trillion naira when it comes to our revenue for 2024, and don't forget, debt servicing has to come out from the income that we are going to make. So when you take out 8.75 trillion naira, we are left with 8.75 trillion naira left for us to be able to finance the budget, rather 9.75 trillion naira to finance the budget for 2024. So yes, our debt service is high, and we've seen the debt management office complain over and over and lament, and we have talked about how much debt servicing is gulping our revenue. But we are seeing the reason why it is not taking the high percentage as it has in the past, and as the debt management office have made known to us, is because the estimate this time around for our revenue is 18 trillion. So if we do not meet this 18 trillion naira estimate, then we will see that, of course, debt servicing is going to go over 70% of our revenue for 2024. However, if we are able to meet this 18 trillion estimated revenue, then of course our debt service won't take that much out of the revenue, and we will still have enough left to be able to finance some part of the budget for 2024. Now, we're seeing that, of course, we will be borrowing 8.75 trillion naira if we are going to be making 18 trillion naira to be able to finance the rest of the budget. And then we are going to get these loans from African Development Bank, then the Canada Bank of Africa. And then we've seen recently also that the president have sought approval for a new $8.7 billion and also 100 billion euro loan. So we're still on a borrowing spree regardless, and until 2024, if we're able to meet our 18 trillion revenue estimate and target, then perhaps we will see a decrease in borrowing. But as it stands now, there will be more approval for monies to be borrowed coming from the president down to our lawmakers needing approval. Yes, so this is much about the long-awaited budget of 2024. We are at 27.5 trillion. Until the lawmakers are done, that is the National Assembly and the House of Representatives, until they're done, for now we stand at 27.5 trillion. We don't know if it will go high or low, but what it stands right now when it comes to our 2024 budget is 27.5 trillion naira. Now, we will not stop overemphasizing on the fact that the old notes and the new notes remain legal tender indefinitely. This is an order coming from the Supreme Court saying that the December 31st deadline no longer holds. As it is now, we will keep using our old 200 naira notes, 500 naira notes alongside with the 1000 naira note, both the redesign and the old notes indefinitely way into 2024 until something new comes up from the Central Bank of Nigeria. Now, we're seeing that despite the Apex Court having on March 3rd restrained the Central Bank of Nigeria from giving effect to the deadline on the use of old notes, we're seeing that the CBN last week extended the validity of the 200 naira old notes, 500 and 1000 notes indefinitely. So yes, we saw that coming first from the Central Bank of Nigeria. We talked about it here on Business and Finance, and then we are now coming with the part of the Supreme Court now giving an order that it stands indefinitely. So with this court order coming from the Supreme Court, the Apex Bank just have to follow it indefinitely, and until the Supreme Court says otherwise. They are the final authority in the country, so the CBN have to adhere to this order coming from the Supreme Court that the new and the old notes will coexist indefinitely. This is to take off the hardship from Nigerians, and of course we don't want to see a repeat of the cash crunch, as it was very chaotic for us. We saw that it affected inflation, we saw that it affected our exchange rate, we saw that it wasn't joke as money was being sold in the country. Yes, we bought naira for naira. And I believe the Supreme Court don't want a repeat of that. The CBN also don't want a repeat of that. And of course, they're sitting down looking at the measures to see that they will withdraw gradually the old notes in circulation and just have the new notes there. Because in the beginning, there was an aim to this redesign. And as it stands now, the aim have not been achieved. But I believe that the Central Bank of Nigeria have not stopped its pursuit to see that naira circulating out is less compared to what they have in their coffers. Now, African Development Bank is predicting a very slow growth rate for oil-dependent countries. Not only Nigeria, but every other country that depends solely on oil production is going to see a slow growth rate for 2024. And I mean, Nigeria is at the top of the chart, as we are seeing that even our 2024 budget is estimated on revenue generated from oil production and sales. Now, the African Development Bank has predicted slower economic growth amongst countries that are dependent on oil revenue. In its economic outlook for Africa, the African Development Bank noted that African economies largely dependent on tourism and oil sales could see a drop in economic growth, while non-resource intense economy will see an increase in economic growth. Now, we have a potential as Nigeria to also be a non-resource intensive economy because we have many other resources. We're looking at agriculture aside from oil production. So yes, we also have what it takes to be a non-resource intensive economy. Therefore, if we can shift our gaze a little bit away from oil production, we will be able to harness revenue from other resources aside from oil, and we will also be able to see a fast-paced growth. Now, the report states across country groupings for Africa's tourism-dependent countries, growth in projection to decline from 9.3% in 2022. Now, we're going back as far as 2022. Now, what we are having now in 2023 and what will be for the future 2024. Now, this is 5.9% in 2023 before moderating to 4.1% in 2024. Oil exporting countries are expected to see a marginal decline from 4.4% in 2024 to a projected 3.7% and 3.5% in 2024 and then 2024 respectively. Growth in non-resource intensive economies is projected to rise to 4.8% in 2023, reflecting a 0.5% point upward revision from 2022, and to further rise to to 5.3% in 2024. Now, the bank attributed the growth decline in oil-dependent economies to stem from oil production cuts aimed at soaring up failing oil prices, tightening global financial conditions, and high inflation, strangling growth in non-oil sectors of those economies. And I would like to focus to the major reason being brought forward by the African Development Bank that is tied to the decline in oil economies to stem from oil production cuts. Because recently, we are having OPEC Plus cutting oil output for every other country, including Nigeria. Now, what was our quota in the past was 1.8 million barrels per day. However, Nigeria have not been able to meet its quota by OPEC. Now, we are seeing that the highest we've reached for the year 2024 was 1.4 million barrels per year. For this year in June, in the month of June, we were able to reach 1.4 million barrels per day. Now, this cut is that we are going to be producing 1.5 million barrels per day. Despite the federal government giving us an estimate that we have the capacity to produce over 1.7 million barrels for this year 2023 so far, the highest we've reached in the month of June was 1.4 million. Now, looking that we are able to reach 1.4 million, I mean, it's not surprising that OPEC is giving us an oil output cut of 1.4 million barrels per day. So this is closer to what we have achieved for 2023, perhaps in 2024, putting down all the work in place, tackling oil theft, we will be able to meet our OPEC quota of 1.5 million barrels. And no wonder we are having the African Development Bank saying that this is the reason we can see a setback in our economic growth, because we are largely dependent on oil production. So with this cut from OPEC, we are going to see a slow growth rate when it comes to 2024 economically. So it's left to us to shift our gaze a little bit from oil and look at every other sector, mineral, we can look at agriculture, and we can look at every other, we can look at our digital economy, we can look at the marine economy, that is the blue economy. We can look at every sector that has been lagging in the past years and say, you know what, oil is there, but we need to start generating more revenue from other resources rather than oil. Then perhaps this forecast by African Development Bank will not affect Nigeria, and we will be able to see massive growth in our economy. Now the federal government is having concerns concerning 80% surge in importation of food consumed in the country. I mean, who is to blame? But this is not a blame game. We can keep that at the side. But then we are having 80% increase, and it's alarming, because this importation, it is alarming. It's like we depend on everything we consume in the country. Now, no fewer than 88.5 million Nigerians are currently faced with insufficient food consumption, with a figure projected to increase by 6 million as of this month 2023. We're talking about December. So by the end of December, we are seeing 6 more million joining this already 88.5 million Nigerians. Now, this is a report as far back as 2019 down to 2023, where 80% of what we consume is being imported. So starting from 2019 up to this year 2023, we're having 80% of what we consume being imported into the country. Now, we can keep wondering, like, what are these things that we import into the country that has to be so 80%? So now, when we talk about food that we import into the country, when we import wheat, sugar, fish, and milk, with the main agricultural export, we just export few things compared to what we import. Now, this is a report dating as far back as 2020, and the number of what we import has increased. And you wonder, is only wheat, is only sugar, is only fish, and is only milk? But no, we consume pasta in this country, and it's made out of wheat. So without the importation of wheat into the country, we won't have our pastas, we won't have our noodles, we won't have what we know popularly as spaghetti, we won't have what we know as macaroni. These are all wheat products. So we import wheat and we make other finished goods in this country. Now we can go to sugar also. We import sugar into the country. We import the raw materials. As many of the processed meals that we consume, that we buy in our stores, of course, always have sugar in it. And we could talk about fish. Every fish, majority of the fish we consume in this country is imported. We do not farm fish largely. I mean, we know the few that we consume when it comes to the dry fish, the live catfish we have. But aside that, every other fish you buy that we popularly know as iced fish is imported into this country. And also for milk, we do not have enough dairy farms in the country to produce milk for us, and we are importing milk into the country, and milk is one of those things that are consumed daily, which is important for upgrade. And this is the reason why we are seeing stunted growth among children in the country. It has become a problem that it has made it that we are seeing that we are having stunted growth, and it is alarming because we are having our exchange rate not suitable at the moment. We are seeing that the currency is devaluing, and which makes all of these goods very expensive, most especially milk. No wonder children are not having access to nutrition and balanced diet, and then we are having issues of stunted growth in the country. So yes, we are consuming over 80% of the food we eat in this country imported into the country, and it has become alarming. It's alarming to the federal government, talk more of us, the common man in Nigeria. It will be alarming to everybody. But I just hope that things are going to be done and put in place. We can also put aside the fact that they have been banned on over 43 items, rice inclusive, other tin fish like the geisha we popularly know. And this already increases the number of what we import into the country. Now, this might feel like not a good thing in a lot of ways, but then it also shows that if these statistics are coming to us, the federal government of Nigeria should be on their toes, making sure that come 2024, we will be having a decrease in this 80%, and perhaps we will see ourselves standing at 60% come 2024 of imported food into the country. And I'll close the show today by saying a big congratulations to the United Bank of Africa for winning the Bankers Award of Africa Bank of the Year. Yes, we've had our banks doing great job. We've seen Zenith Bank bagging a lot of awards in the past, and now we are having UBA getting home the Bankers Award of African Bank of the Year. So yes, congratulations to UBA and every bank that have been making access to money to us easy, and also other monetary policies more easy on Nigerians, and every financial institution that has been helping, the system to grow, give loans to small scale, medium enterprises, and also make sure that every other things are accessible to us directly on our phones and even within us, and also trying to go far to the rural areas, making sure that certain services are available not only to those at the urban areas. And this is how far I'll go today on the show. Goodbye, see you next time.